The Nobel Peace Prize for 2014.
Mr. Kailash Satyarthi.
My dear children of Bangladesh, Honourable Minister Haq Sahab, Mr. Mozammel Haq, my dear younger brother and the President of the Association, Bangladesh Civil Services Cadres Association, Mr. Hadi, Sumedhaji, dear friends, sisters and brothers. When Brother Hadi was talking, I could not understand fully, but in India, many of us understand Bangla a little bit. For example, the first thing we learned many years ago through the film, Ami tomake bhalobasi, Ami tomake bhalobasi, I love you. Is it the translation? ठीक है. And then what I was saying then, when he was talking, he is speaking his heart, not just mind. And that I found in since last day. Such a dedicated team he has. Congratulations for that, and congratulations for organizing this event. My dear young friends, let me underline here one thing. That you are among the brightest youth of this nation. And that brings a huge sense of moral responsibility and moral accountability to this nation, to the people of Bangladesh. You are not simply a career bureaucrat. That might be the dream of your parents, your own hard work, your talent, opportunities the country has given to you, so many factors. But apart from that, my young friends, you are the custodian of dreams of Bangabandhu. You are the custodians of dreams of all those whom we call martyrs now because they have sacrificed. They made the supreme sacrifice for you, so that not only their generation, but the generations to come can have dreams of Amar Sonar Bangla. You are custodian of that aspiration and dream. You can do it. Bangladesh has proven in last few decades, for several decades, that in spite of all the difficulties and obstacles, in spite of so many problems, your journey began with freedom movement. And today we are so proud to have the minister in charge of this ministry, Mozammel Haq Sahab, is responsible for this legacy, but also justice. Today I am talking about the legacy. As I said before, that you are the custodian of dreams of that legacy and that legends, those legends. Yesterday, you mentioned already, Sumedha ji, me and my colleague, Saurabh Sanyal, were fortunate to visit Bangabandhu Museum. I was lost of words when I was asked to write something on the visitor's book. Because so many contradictory emotions. On one hand, my heart was filled with pride, with a sense of worship, with inspiration. And not only me, but those who believe in humanity, those who believe in freedom, justice, equality, plurality. That is the place of something like pilgrim, a sacred place. That was one feeling anybody can have there. But another feeling which is contradictory to it is the deep sorrow, an anger, how can you see the bullet marks on the wall of the father of this nation? How can you see the bullet marks which passed through a 10-year-old child, Sheikh Russel, and then making a mark on the wall? Not only the family, but friends and relatives, pregnant woman, newly married couple, they were assassinated by human beings. How can we call them human? I don't think that animals can ever do it. They can kill each other, but not so brutally the young people, young children. We are intelligent enough, but that intelligence has created arms, bullets, that can shed the blood of innocent people. Even today, unfortunately, in a number of countries in the world, they have many more guns, sophisticated guns, than the books, than the toys. In a number of places on this earth, number of soldiers, armed people, is more than the number of teachers. How can we call our world civilized? Looking at all those scenes which I saw yesterday. But dear friends, this also brings a tremendous hope. You can kill Bangabandhu. You can kill 10-year-old Russell. You can kill the family. You can kill many people. But nobody on the earth can kill the soul of Bangladesh. And my friends, you represent that soul. You might have joined this job to earn a good life and money and power. But when I'm addressing you, I'm addressing the soul of Bangladesh. Dear friends, thanks for giving this title, Will for Children, today. And I, of course, congratulate you for your 10th anniversary? Yeah. I think all of you are more than 10-year-old, except a few children who are sitting here, whom I addressed first. There are 5, 6, 7, maybe 4-year-old children also. Whose children are they? The mother is talking to the children. Your children. आपके बच्चे हैं ये. थोड़ा हिंदी जानते हैं? थोड़ा जानते हैं? तो बहुत अच्छी बात है, आप बच्चों को लेके आए हो, तभी पता लग रहा है कि we are talking about will for children. Dear friends, we have been listening since our childhood that children are the future of the country, any country. Children are the future of the world. And we have made tremendous progress in educating children, in caring, giving health support, and shaping their future. All across the world, the progress has been made. We had constitutional provisions almost in every country. We have laws to protect our children. We have international treaties and norms. We have United Nations agencies. And we have commitments to our children which were made in Sustainable Development Goals and many other occasions. But let me tell you, globally, we do not have adequate will, social will and political will for our children in the world. Today, more than 200 million children are not in school, primary and secondary schools. What is needed to educate these children and ensure their well-being in schools? That is just $40 billion additional dollars annually. And what is that $40 billion US dollars? That is less than a week of global military expenditure. Today we have 160 million children who are working as child laborers. Many of them are sold and bought like goods or animals. Many of them are pushed into prostitution and slavery and trafficking. They are producing wealth in mines and factories. But we don't prioritize their issues to give them freedom and childhood back and education back. And that is a serious need to generate social will, political will. Without that, the laws and policies cannot be implemented. When the Sustainable Development Goals were adopted by the General Assembly, and we are all committed for this global development agenda, and most of the things have to be achieved, almost all things have to be achieved by 2030, but the issues related to children like slavery, trafficking, child labor, that must be eradicated completely by 2025. That was the international commitment. But many of you would be shocked to hear that during last 20 years or so, the number of out-of-school children and number of child laborers has been decreasing. And that made the remarkable progress. Needless to say that Bangladesh has introduced so many schemes. Right from the birth or even before the birth of a child, for pregnant women, schemes have been introduced, and they are there. Bangladesh was the first South Asian country that has achieved gender parity in primary education and gender parity in secondary education also. There are so many schemes for poor people, for the social inclusion. I have read and I heard. And I was so not only impressed, but inspired in my last meeting with Sheikh Hasina Appa, your Prime Minister. I had met her before a few times. But this time, we had a longer discussion, more than an hour, in Delhi when she was visiting India. And many of the very important people, so-called important people, who were waiting and sitting outside because we were engaged in talking on all these issues. And I was surprised also that the way she explained many of those social protection programs, not only the 5-year-old plan, but the social protection programs, which can help in reducing child marriages. Then I would like to congratulate here and add one sentence that your association has helped in stopping 3,000 child marriages. Is it true? But Hasina Appa, Sheikh Hasina Appa, in such a way explained many of those schemes, one can feel that it is not the knowledge, it is her compassion, it was her commitment, it was her conviction that these schemes must be implemented. You are custodians of her conviction, her compassion and her commitment. Who else will do? The Prime Minister can think and do. The ministers can help and design good programs. Parliament can work out on schemes and policies. But then you are the hands, you are the eyes, you are the face. They are not going to meet. Ordinary people in the villages and districts are not going to meet and talk to Honourable Minister or the Prime Minister. But they meet you. So you represent their face. That is a very, very serious responsibility you have got. So Bangladesh has made several progress on several issues, but still lot has to be done. Nobody can say, no country can say that, or no individual can say that she or he is perfect. That perfection is an ongoing process. If you don't put hard work and heart with it, then it would be derailed. Even the best schemes could be derailed. We know that a number of countries need financial and technical support from the international community, from the global north. We were hoping, people like us were hoping and writing that the pandemic will teach us a lesson that world is not only interconnected, but it is interdependent. We cannot solve any problem without each other. We all faced one single common enemy, and that was COVID-19. And it is coming, changing its shape and face and coming again and again. then we know that the vaccine has been produced somewhere else, but it was invented in different laboratories, in different countries. Scientists coming from different parts of the world came together and put their minds. Those who were working in laboratories, they were working physically, but also the lot of online conversations went on day and night, day in and day out. And that has helped in vaccination. So there was hope. But unfortunately, the world has not yet learned from that. It's also a difficult situation because we are passing through a compounded crisis, the age of compounded crisis. We have been all quite concerned about the global warming, the climate crisis. Then came pandemic. Then the Russian invasion on Ukraine. Then the issues related to girls in Afghanistan. So many problems. So it is compounded crisis, but also it's a competitive situation relating to issues and priorities. So 4 years ago, the attention was more on global warming crisis, then pandemic, then Russian war. But you cannot ignore any of these things. To mitigate the effect of COVID-19, it was not only the health crisis, but it was economic crisis, it was social crisis. I called it the crisis of civilization because it has collectively changed our way of thinking. Rich countries, G7 countries, have launched. I will give you 2 examples why the world has not learned. G7 countries has launched a very ambitious but very hopeful program called Global Action Agenda for COVID-19. And earmarked initially $8 trillion and then $10 trillion. The program was $12 trillion. $12 trillion program. That was not to address the health crisis, that was more to address the global economic crisis. But what a shame, I would say, that only 0.13%, not even 0.5%, 0.13% of that $12 trillion has been given to low-income countries, the needy countries in the rest of the world. Almost all the money has been invested for the recovery of their own financial institutions, banks and corporations. We call United Nations. We call Sustainable Development Goals are the remedy of our collective problems, or single remedy, or one of the most concrete, clear solution to many of the problems the world is facing. And not only it is a suggestion, but it's a commitment made by all the nations in the world, in the UN. But during the first 4 years of SDGs, between 2016 to 2020, before pandemic, the number of child laborers increased in the world from 152 million to 160 million. What is the justification? What is the excuse for that? During those 4 years, when every single day 10,000 new children were pushed into child labor workforce in Africa, 10,000 children every day. The world has grown $10 trillion richer. There was no dearth of money, resources. Our technology is much more advanced, and every day is getting more and more advanced. And we believe that technology should be the problem solver. The world has never been so rich as it is today. The world has not seen so many billionaires as we see today, and most of these billionaires were born during the crisis time, these last 3-4 years, globally. So the countries who are doing great work, Bangladesh is one of them. They must be helped, supported, financially and otherwise, by the rich countries, by the United Nations agencies, and by the rest of the world. Because such countries can show the path to rest of the developing countries or low-income countries. But if the rich countries talk so much, and the biggest crisis the world has been facing during the pandemic, in this century and the last century, at least in this century, only 0.3% has been earmarked of this money given to the poor countries. So we cannot simply depend on those kind of promises made. Young people of all developing nations, students, youth, women, should rise, should be properly educated, should have a strong resolve and conviction to make their nations and the world better. If the feeling of global sisterhood, global brotherhood, global familyhood is not coming from the rich countries, we have to start from here. We have done it in the past. All of us come from South Asian countries. And South Asia, or I would say that Asia, is the mother of compassion. Many religions were born here, but almost all religions had a ground to flourish here. And that was not just the land, it was the hearts of human beings. That is one. We have to strengthen ourselves. And we have to act in such a way that how we can live together, how we believe in plurality, how we respect each other's faith, how we respect each other's viewpoint, how we respect our neighbor and care for our neighbor, whatever culture or whatever caste or whatever ideologies one belongs to, but that social harmony, that social fabrication, that social cohesiveness is the key for inner strength, develop that inner strength. Secondly, we have to create an environment, the whole ecosystem of hope, positivity. There are so many problems, so many difficulties one can face in the social and political life, personal life. But there are definitely certain things which can inspire you. There are certainly certain things can bring hope in the lives of individual and in the lives of nation. So try to, young people, you are all young people. That's why I'm saying that try to hold that thread of hope. Charge, keep charging the battery of hope so that they can use it. The light can be used in any situation of darkness and difficulty. I am not preaching you, but I am calling upon you, dear friends, that you are the makers of new Bangladesh. The Bangladesh who is much more prideful, much more proud, much more self-sufficient, much more stronger, much more human and just and equal, more democratic. You can work on all these directions because this is your legacy. But that can begin only with your children. You can do some kind of mercy, some charity for children, considering that they are poor, they need you. But it is not enough. The will for children can come only when we feel respect for our children. When we acknowledge the dignity of a child as a human being. If a child is poor, if a child is left out, if a child is in danger, and if we help that child, it should be an act of rights and dignity, not just charity. So that sense has to prevail, and that sense has to be developed. My dream was always to make a world which is child-friendly. Child-friendly world. And friendliness means mutual respect, mutual learning. Child-friendliness means, or friendliness means trust. How can you make someone friend if you don't really respect that person? How can you make someone trustworthy friend if you don't have trust to each other? So have trust in the potential of that child. That is the key in building a child-friendly society, and eventually we can help, we can create a world with the will for children. I will tell you one more thing. When we see that children are working as child laborers anywhere in the world, and we simplify it by saying that it is because of poverty, it's true also, but it is not the complete truth. If the children are not going to school, we say that it's because of poverty. So sometimes the poverty is used as an excuse for many of those sins and crimes which we keep on committing. I'm not talking about the political part of it, I'm talking about the social, cultural mindset that we think, oh, they are poor. But there is a triangular relationship between child labor, poverty, and illiteracy. Today, when 160 million children are working in the world as child laborers, means 160 million empty seats in the classrooms, because they are not in the classrooms. So there is a direct bearing, direct relationship, correlation between child labor and the empty seats in classroom or illiteracy. But we must not forget that every single child laborer is employed at the cost of some adult's job, one adult job at least. And that adult person could be brother or father or mother of that child. Every single child is working at the cost of one adult job. Globally speaking, as I said, that 200 or 210 million children are out of school and 210 million jobless adults. That makes a vicious circle of illiteracy and unemployment. And unemployment causes and perpetuates poverty, loss of dignity, and so many other problems. So we have to see and we have to analyze those issues with a different eye. Helping children is not just a charity or humanitarian work. It has an economic imperative also. There are so many studies conducted One study was launched about 2 decades ago or more by World Bank, ILO, IMF was also present there in Washington, D.C. And that study revealed that investment on eradication of child labor gives 7 times return. If you invest $1 on eradication of child labor, the return would be $7 over the next 20 years. There is another study which has been launched again by UNICEF, UNESCO, World Bank. I was also invited to launch that some years ago in South Korea. And that again revealed and reaffirms that if you invest $1 in education, then the return would be $15. So investment in education, investment in protection of children, investment in eradication of child labor, investment in health support for a child gives multiple times return. So it has a strong economic imperative. If our girls are educated, then so many problems are solved. And therefore, when we talk of free and compulsory education for girls globally, the governments have to make laws so that the girls can retain in school education until the age of 18. And rich countries have to put money in it because they kept on making a lot of promises, but these promises remain hollow. They cannot simply say or simply preach and come out with these reports that the low-income countries have not been able to perform this or that. But we live in a globalized world and it's a common agenda which we have to attain, fulfill. So investment in all these things. Child marriage is also a curse. I know that, not to repeat, I said already that Prime Minister has introduced a very, very good scheme which can help in preventing child marriages. And we must know that child marriage also has a lot of consequences, economic consequences for the future. It is not only the biological consequence on the girl's body, but it has economic and social consequences. Now, due to pandemic, I know that in most countries, in most developing countries, the child labor and child marriages and child trafficking is growing. Many of the poor families are forced to send their girls to their in-laws' house with the bridal knot, wanted to marry them because they cannot afford. The people who lost their livelihoods, traditional livelihoods, due to pandemic, or they lost livelihoods in the neighboring states or neighboring countries, they are forced to marry their girls at early age. But their fear, there is an additional fear that the safety of many girls is in danger. The child sexual abuse is also related to it. Child sexual abuse is also a global phenomenon. And that requires not only the legal actions, not only the political and governmental actions, but it is the moral responsibility of the families that our girls and our boys are not sexually abused or should not be abused inside the families, inside the schools, inside the neighborhood, and that is the quite common thing. 20, 30, 40, even 50% of the children are abused in their early ages. Now a new problem is emerging, already emerged. It's a very, very serious problem, and that is online child sexual abuse. The demand for child porn material has increased manifold. So please keep an eye that your children do not fall into it. This is not just one country's problem, because the internet is not domestic. The websites are not just localized. They are global. So if something happens or something is produced in one part of the world, within no time, in real time, in fact, millions, hundreds of millions people can watch that content. So we have to be very aware of it. Our teachers, our parents have to be aware of it, so that our children are not pushed into that and we are not consuming that material which is really so damaging for our souls and our societies. There are laws in the countries about it, but when it comes to uploading the material from one part of the world, from anywhere, then there are no clear laws. Downloading, if you use that, if you consume that material, then you could be caught by your police or Interpol. But globally, it is happening and people are consuming material. But downloading and uploading is something which has to be regularized, which is not there. There is no international law to regulate all those data service providers, internet data service providers, so that they cannot transfer or they cannot upload that material. The material should not pass through their internet system. All these things are there. Dear friends, children of Bangladesh, children of Asia, children of the world need you. You should be again the savior of their future. Savior of their future. And that is possible when you start thinking for them. I have been coming to Bangladesh since mid-80s. First time when I came here, I think it was in 1986 or 85, I can't recall. And I was talking to a group of people in Caritas, Bangladesh office, and they were doing some good charity work, some of those officers. I came for a conference, and then I started talking that in India, so many children are trapped into child labor, trafficking, slavery. I knew that in Bangladesh and Pakistan, similar situation is there. I also knew that in Bangladesh, that was in mid-80s, the situation is more or less same in the entire South Asia. One of the Bangladeshi, he could be very big patriot, maybe. So he said that, Mr. Satyarthi, this is the problem of India, and it would be great that if you solve the problems in your own country. I was laughing at him. And those days, almost 35 years ago or more, I said that I tell you that no problem can be seen and solved in isolation. But I also said that I don't believe in anything which has created to divide the world. Children are not responsible for child labor in any part of the world. Children are not responsible for poverty. They have not fought wars. They have not produced weapons, nuclear weapons. They have not created any kind of caste hierarchy or religious divisions and so on and so forth. They are just victims. They were not responsible for pandemic, but they are worst victims now. They have to pay the biggest cost. Now I am saying. But that day I told that all Bangladeshi children are my children as my Indian children are my children. I am talking to you, not as an Indian. I am talking to as someone who has been engaged in many, many activities in Bangladesh for education of children, for well-being of children for several decades, with number of small partners, unknown organizations organizations who were working for education, organizations who were working on child labor and other issues. We have been working with them. Small, unknown organizations. Of course, they are very big organizations in this country. But I'm talking about those who were dedicated constructively for the betterment of society and the nation. So when the Nobel Prize came, some international journalists thought that it is just for my work in India. But let me tell you that the very first day I said that this is because of all those countries and the people of those countries whom I have been working with and who have supported my struggle against child slavery. And Pakistan, Bangladesh, Nepal are among the first countries. So the credit for my Nobel Prize is not the credit for India's social activist. My introduction, you said, what did you say? The child rights activist from India. I tell you that I am child rights activist in Bangladesh also. And I have no difference seeing my children in Bangladesh different from Pakistani children or Indian children or Sudanese children or American children or European children. And so far we work in more than 140 countries. Even before my Nobel Prize announcement, I have been working in 140 countries. Today I met a group of, I'm just summing up, I met a group of some children. For me, they are children. Aminul Haq was one, Shaifuddin was another, Kokhan, I was missing him. Kokhan was 14-year-old child who lost his leg in an accident as child laborer. In 1998, when we organized the Global March Against Child Labor, the Global March went across 103 countries, physical march on the earth, covered 40,000 kilometers distance, 80,000 kilometers distance. This is double than the periphery. The earth's periphery is 40,000. With a demand that there should be some international law, the ILO Convention against the worst forms of child labor. And we succeeded in it. But in that long march, across all that distance and so many countries, this little child with one leg was carrying the flag and chanting slogans, "No more tools in tiny hands, we want books, we want toys." Kokhan has spoken to several presidents and prime ministers, and he said that world is not so poor that cannot take away the tools and guns from our hands and replace them with toys and books and pencils. That Kokhan is the father of 2 children here in Bangladesh. He lives in Dhaka, but we could not meet him because for last few days he's traveling somewhere. He has gone with the group, Istama group. So he did not know also that we are coming. But I think Kokhan has to make calls if he is in pain, if he is in joy, if he is in problem, if he gets something good in his life, he calls Sumedhaji as mother and calls me, because we are family and he was with us for so many months. For 6 months we walked together. But that has also resulted. There were several Bangladeshi children who marched with me that time, 6 months. I spoke to a few of them on telephone today. They are grown up now. One is working with the Japanese embassy, another working with an international company. He came here today with his little child. There's another who works with the government, and he also came and met me. So They are all my children, though they are fathers and mothers of others. I spoke to little Lily, also from Dhaka, a nearby place from Dhaka, and she was withdrawn from child labor, domestic child labor, but she was a strong voice and a spokesperson during that time in the Global March in 1998. I can name many, many organizations and individuals whom I worked with, and I'm thankful to them. And I'm standing here due to Khokhan, Jameel, Saifuddin, Alam Rahman, Lily, Sultana of Bangladesh, and thousands of many more children who marched with us. So, dear friends, we should also think beyond our borders. We have to do every possible thing for the betterment of our own countries, but when we look the world with the child's eye, then the world is one world. When we look the world with a child's lens, then the world is very beautiful, undivided world. The world is more human. World is more simple. Let us look the world with a child's eye. Bangladesh has done a great work, and last time when I was talking to the Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, she has supported my idea, which I put on media and social media also, and appreciated and loved by many people in the world, across the world, the idea of creating a global social protection mechanism. Bangladesh has been the laboratory. India has been the laboratory. There are many countries, Brazil, Nigeria, many countries who have introduced social protection programs, and they have been successful, those programs. So in our countries, respective countries, the social protection program was the most effective program in fighting poverty, illiteracy, ill health, and many more, gender discrimination, and so on. So we are working for a global social protection mechanism that should be introduced by the United Nations, and the rich countries like G7 and G20 should support that idea. European Union is also in favor of that idea, and some countries have shown interest, but Bangladesh is one of those countries, and Prime Minister herself has promised me to support that idea of a global social protection mechanism where all of you can also showcase the great work you have done, dear friends. I once again congratulate you and thank you for being here and listening to my talk so carefully. Consider me as your friend. Consider me as your Nobel laureate, your spokesperson, and the ambassador of all children of the world, but also of Bangladesh. I will keep on talking and working for them. I will also be raising the voice of Rohingya children's education, which was brought to my notice yesterday. Thanks to you, each one of you, and the government for giving shelter and support for 1.2 million Rohingya people, and their children are facing serious issues, and that has to be brought before the world, and much more support has to be mobilized for their online education or other kind of education. All these things will work. While concluding, and I wanted to present a memento to the Honourable Minister, as well as Brother Hadi from my organization, but it has a story. When I was invited to give my Nobel acceptance speech in Oslo, I lost my papers. And the Nobel Committee has asked that you have to read through the written document, because that becomes an intellectual property, and that it becomes the matter of a lot of researches and so many other things. But I'm not used to read. So I was carrying notes, but I lost a few of them. And then a story came to my mind. There was a heavy fire broken out in jungle. All animals and birds were rushing for a safer place. They were leaving jungle, including King Lion. And Lion noticed a tiny bird, tiny hummingbird, was flowing straight to the fire. So Lion shouted, "What are you doing? Committing suicide? What are you doing?" She said, "Sir, I am going to extinguish this fire because I was born and grew up here." More surprisingly, he shouted, "How come? How can you do it?" Then she answered, "Sir, look at my beak. मेरी चोंच को देखो. I am carrying a drop of water. I am doing my bit. मैं अपना काम कर रही हूँ. I am doing my bit," she said. मैं इस जंगल को नहीं छोड़ सकती क्योंकि मैं यहाँ पैदा हुई हूँ. I was born and grew up here. She flew. Rest is the history. You are born on this beautiful land and grew up here. This land has given you everything, everything, I tell you. Now it's your turn to do your bit for this land, but also for our children, for the most marginalized, for the most vulnerable, for the most exploited. Young people of this country needs you. I am not a preacher, not a leader. I am here to awaken that hummingbird which is inside each one of you. Thank you very much. Thank you for your patience. Thank you. Thank you. Rukaएं? Honourable Minister.